Welcome once again. My name is Stephen Katz. I'm a marriage and family therapist here in Hawaii. And the name of this show is Shrink Wrap. And I don't know if I ever explained the name of the show. I thought you could figure it out probably for yourself. But I called it that because I wrap with shrinks or other therapists or other people in the mental health profession or something similar. And before I forget, I have a special announcement. There is a free group being formed right now. Dr. Richard Reese will be facilitating a free bereavement and caregiver support group starting Sunday, June 5th, 2016, through to the end of the year. The group will be primarily oriented towards bereavement, but will also address caregiver resiliency issues and anticipatory loss. We welcome up to 12 members. The group will meet on Sundays from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at Temple Emmanuel, which is at 2550 Pully Highway. If you're interested, call Dr. Reese at 808-295-3999 or call the rabbi at Temple Emmanuel, and that number is 596-7521 extension 3270. Or you can email the rabbi at shaloha.org. Thank you very much. And now, I'm very excited to introduce you to, not doctor yet, he's a doctoral student, and he's here to present, who is he? Anthony K. Sigmund is here with me. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you.
And you've got so many letters after your name and so much that you've accomplished. And like when I saw him, I thought he's like, 25. Turns out he's a lot older than that. And he's done a lot before getting to this chair. I'm not sure where to start. You said you grew up in Ohio, but then I asked you, how'd you get to Ohio? Because you said, there's not too many people that looked like you when you were growing up in this little town in Ohio.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about your origins.
Okay. So I was born in Korea.
Uh-huh.
So 100% Korean. A lot of people, when they see me, they think I'm mixed with different varieties of different cultures and ethnic backgrounds. But born in Korea, and my aunt adopted me. And when she married, she brought me to the United States. So I traveled here, or I moved here when I was about 5 years old. And like I said earlier, of all places, I settled down in Ohio. So I went to a very small high school, and there was probably 2 Asian kids, me being one of them. And that's where I grew up, in one building for high school, elementary, and middle school.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How many kids were in the graduating class?
My graduating class, I think we had like 62, 63. It's very, very small.
Uh-huh. So, being in the field that we're in, of course, I ask questions like, so, what was that like being a tiny, tiny minority?
Well, it's a lot different from what it is now, I think. Back then, we're talking about early 70s, mid 70s. So I think the opinions of the public and how they view different cultures is a little bit different than they do now. They might have been a little bit more rough around the edges and not so, I think, fair sometimes with some of the cultures, different ethnic backgrounds. So it was very, very difficult. I had a lot of harassment, a lot of situations where I was, kind of singled out because of my nationality. So it was kind of difficult growing up in that time frame. But I think that's what made me so rough around the edges, maybe, or very, very easy to handle big problems or have a lot of resiliency. I think probably formed from that.
That's what I was thinking. You must have figured out a lot of ways to cope with that.
Yeah.
Getting bullied and stuff like that.
Yeah, so some of those things were like, I was very good at sports. So around my freshman year, I kind of sprouted and I became, very tall and I filled out. So I was less likely to get, kind of harassed than most kids.
Uh-huh.
So I played sports, and I think at that time I was very aggressive at that time frame.
Uh-huh.
So, and then I was very strong-willed, and I had a strong personality. So a lot of people didn't really kind of,
Mess with you.
mess with me once I got older.
Uh-huh.
And then I thought it was a great fit for me to join the military, and that's kind of where I took off from there. Is I joined the military when I was actually 16. My parents had a sign for me.
Wow. Had you already graduated high school?
No, I was actually, this was my senior year that I joined. Actually, I joined at the end of my junior year. I did my senior year. In between my junior and senior year, I did like a pre-basic training class that was at a National Guard armory.
Uh-huh.
And then after I graduated, probably about a month after, I got shipped off to basic training. I did that through the whole summer. And then I came back, and I was actually doing the National Guard for about 2.5 years, trying to go through college. But at that time, I wasn't ready to kind of, step into the academic field and do education. So I ended up enlisting probably about 2 years later, full time.
Oh, rather than National Guard, regular Army.
Correct.
And where did they send you?
Wow. So over the last 25 years, I've been everywhere. I've been to Korea, Haiti, Honduras, Kosovo, Macedonia, been deployed 5 times, all around the United States. And the last, probably since 2010, I've been here in Hawaii. I've been to Japan too. I was stationed in Japan. So I've been a lot of different places, and I really enjoyed the 25 years I was in.
From the 5, when somebody says I've been deployed 5 times, it doesn't somehow bring up the word enjoyed.
Yeah.
It must have been some really tough times. What was your job there?
So different times I went, I had different jobs, but most of it was always in some type of leadership or aircraft maintenance facet. So I was either in charge of maintenance, or I was in charge of soldiers doing maintenance. I used to be in attack battalions with those are the Apaches and Kiowa warriors.
Does that mean you go out with the planes or helicopters that are doing the attacking while they're doing the attacking?
No, most of the attack helicopters, they go out on their own, they do their missions, and they come back. I do go out, or the first 2 deployments to Iraq, I did go out a lot, leaving the FOB for what we call down aircraft recovery teams, DART missions. So they would take some battle damage, and they would what we call precautionary land in a field or somewhere stable. They get secured by usually infantry guys. Soldiers, and then we would launch from our base and then land and try to assess the damage, fix it, and try to one-time fly it back to the FOB that it came from.
That must have been a little scary.
I did 36 of them in 1 year, and it was, some of them are actually, believe it or not, kind of fun, but some of them are kind of sketchy. And sometimes you kind of looking over your shoulder to think, what's going to happen. I'm kind of stuck out here by myself. One time, I think a communication error happened, or actually weather. They weren't able to actually extract us right away, so I had to stay overnight.
In the field?
In the field. It was pretty safe. We had security, but it was just funny because we didn't prepare for it. So we had to do all kinds of things to keep ourselves warm and eat and all kinds of stuff. So it was kind of exciting, and I know people would probably think it's not, but it was.
Well, I think it would be exciting, but also a little scary.
Yeah.
So then I noticed one of your credits was an MBA. When did that happen?
That was probably like the last maybe 5 years, no, about the last 10 years of my military service. I decided, it's going to be terminal. I have to get out of the military sometime.
Terminal doesn't mean you're going to die.
No. Terminal means that it's going to come to an end, my military career, because you only stay in for 30, if you're lucky, 35 years. So I decided that, hey, I got to do something and make myself marketable when I get out. So I thought I needed to get an advanced degree. Since my background was in management and business, because running a unit as a first sergeant is kind of like running a business. Your human resources, you deal with financial issues, all kinds of stuff. So I thought it was a good fit. So I ended up getting an MBA from Franklin University out of Ohio.
Let's stop at the MBA. Okay. We need to take a break now, they're telling me. And don't touch your mouse. We'll be right back.
Aloha. My name is Richard Emery, and I host Condo Insider. We talk about issues facing the condo association throughout Hawaii and talk about solutions. When you think about it, about 1/3 of our population lives in some form of common interest real estate. We broadcast every Thursday at 3 p.m. Please tune in, and thank you. Aloha.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage on the Think Tech Hawaii Digital Network. On Center Stage, every Wednesday at 2 p.m., we talk to artists of all different ilk, playwrights, novelists, poets, singers, sculptors, you name it. We've had all kinds of interesting people on, and we always talk about what they do and how they do it. And what I find most interesting, we talk about why they do what they do, the process of art, what it does for us and our humanity. I hope that you will come and join us, and maybe you'll get inspired to bring out your creative spirit as well. That's Center Stage on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock on the Think Tech Hawaii Digital Network.
Welcome back to Shrink Wrap. I'm with my guest, Anthony Sigmund, and we left off right after he was getting his master's in business administration. And then what?
I decided that, I was going to use my master's to get out and pursue a career after the military in something in business. I didn't quite know what. At one time, I thought maybe a consulting business, or a business management. I kind of want to get out of the aviation realm because I was doing it for 25 years in the Army, so I was kind of maybe burnt out from that. So I was exploring different opportunities, but I ended up getting promoted, and then I decided to stay in the Army for a few more years. And then I think once I got stationed here in Hawaii up at Wheeler Army Airfield, I decided that after I deployed once and I came back, I kind of realized that I think my true calling and what I really wanted to do was something in psychology. So while I was deployed, I was finishing up my master's as well as doing my undergraduate degree from University of Maryland and getting an undergrad degree in psychology.
You were getting your master's and another undergraduate degree at the same time?
Correct. Yeah. So
and working full time.
And working full time as a first sergeant. So, but when you're deployed, you got to keep yourself kind of busy and kind of forget about everything. Kind of forget about everything else going home. So, and then I decided, just because of the experience that I had with working with soldiers and my own personal experiences in the military, I realized that soldiers were pretty underserved. And there's a big stigma in the Army when it comes to seeking mental health.
Yeah.
So I decided that was what I wanted to do. So I got selected to get promoted again, but this time I decided to turn down the promotion to sergeant major and retire. And then when I retired, I applied to the doctoral program at Argosy University. I got accepted. And that's just solidified the fact that it was the right call for me to do and get out of the Army and go into my next career. So, and that brought me into the psychology field.
It seems like you're about the hardest working person I've ever heard of. And I'm curious about that. I mean, a lot of people would like to know about that. Like, what creates the kind of resiliency that you've had? Like, starting out in kind of some adversity, being, one of two Asian people in the little town where you grew up. And some people would find that really difficult and their life could take a whole different direction. And you got out of high school and joined the military even before that. And then, did this amazing 25-year career with promotions and at the same time got 2 undergraduate degrees, a master's in business, and now you're in a doctoral psychology program. What's the secret?
Well, I think I want to say that probably the secret to my success is probably the military. And believe it or not, ADHD. When I was young, I was diagnosed with ADHD, so I was always picking off the walls and trying to figure out what I want to do next. Yeah.
Wow.
So the military is a great place for it because you're always exposed to something new, and you're always going to a different duty station or a new job or a new experience.
So keeping your attention brief to different things is functional.
Exactly, right. And then after 25 years of actually been in the military and a demanding schedule and learning a very arduous, I would say, work ethic, it transferred over into my civilian career where I'm used to going 1,000 miles a minute every day.
Yeah, yeah.
And now I'm in the civilian world. Not to say that, there's not a lot of civilians out there that don't have busy days, because there's a
Yeah, but
multitude
nobody's
of them.
shooting at you.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't have to jump in foxholes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think that just transferred over into my civilians school and everything like that, and that's where probably a lot of my success has been.
Was the ADHD something you had to overcome in school?
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't realize it when I was young, but now being in the psychology field.
Did it
and,
affect any of your, like reading scores, math scores, stuff like that? Because I used to be a special ed teacher.
Yeah, no, it does, because, I work with a lot of children now, doing psychological assessments,
Yeah.
for ADHD and autism and stuff like that. But I see a lot of the same traits when I was young, inability to focus,
Yeah.
time limits for tests. Those things did affect me when I was younger, and that's probably why I didn't have the best grades, and why the military was the best course of action for me, because I didn't have those assessments or tests that I had to take. It was more hands-on and physical type stuff, which is I was
Right.
better at. And to this day, even in school, I mean, I can't take ADHD medicine because most of them are stimulants, and I have a heart problem. So
Oh, wow.
I have to counteract that by, when most students, when they sit in class and they study, they listen to the teacher and write their notes. But I can't do either one of them. I have to either listen or I have to write notes. So, and I don't write notes very fast, so I just choose to listen to them. And I gain a lot of my information that way. So I am at a disadvantage when it comes to, learning in that sense. But, and that's another reason that kind of I went into the psychology field, is those things that we talked about, where I built my resiliency from, learning disorders, or, being adopted, very traumatic experiences through my life. I learned to overcome those in my way. But a lot of it is I can relay some of this, ways to kind of overcome and build this resiliency to other individuals, and that's another reason why I thought that psychology was the field I need to be in, because of my past and what I've experienced. I want to share that with people, and that's kind of the same aspect I was when I was in the military too.
That's amazing and wonderful. I mean, if you could share that with kids or adults that are having, and when you talk about that inability to write, to listen and take notes, I share the same issues. I was never diagnosed, but I know today I would have been, and they would have had me on Adderall or whatever the latest drug is. And even now, today in my practice, most therapists, and me too, I'll sometimes try it, while the client is talking, they're taking notes. Every time I try that, it's like I get to 5 minutes in and there's no more notes.
Yep.
Right? I gotta wait till the session is over and then write the notes.
Right.
Because I'm torn,
Yep.
right? And I like to think it's for a good reason. I like to think that it's because I feel like I can't really be present for the client and take notes at the same time. Maybe other people, other therapists can do that.
Yeah.
I think they can. I mean, because I've, been on the other side of the chair
Right.
as a patient, client. And yeah, they take notes and it doesn't really bother me very much.
Right.
But as the therapist, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And so I'm so happy to hear you say that you've got the same issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm taking an online course this morning, and she's talking about, and read your handout, blah, blah, blah. I don't read the handout because I can't read the handout and listen to her at the same time. I feel like I'm missing the information, the visual stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
All the visual cues that you get from watching somebody.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I don't think we have a diagnosable problem. I think we have to teach the rest of the world how to be like us.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, learn overcome, the shortcomings that you may have. So, but you're absolutely right. And I just like you're saying, when you're sitting down with a therapist, or a therapist is sitting down sometimes, I think everybody has gone to see a therapist, especially in their psychology field or
Right.
the mental health. And I've seen a therapist where, they're constantly writing, and then you're wondering whether or not they're even paying attention to what you're saying. And that dynamics, the patient-client, dynamics is, I think, sometimes lost with them taking extensive notes. But,
Right.
Some therapists, they have to do that because they need that, ability to go back and look at those.
Maybe because they can't, they're too scared to be present.
That could be true too. Yeah.
With the client.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That could be. That could
That
be.
they're
a fact.
afraid of intimacy.
Right. Yeah.
We should have a diagnosis for people who write while people are talking.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think I actually did a research paper when I was in my first year about the client therapist relationship. That, one experience I had. I won't say where I went, but. The whole time the therapist was talking to me about his accolades and what he has accomplished, and I was thinking to myself, okay, so I'm here for the therapy, or am I now the therapist, right?
Yeah.
Or so I just thought that that interaction is very important, because if you read the statistics, like 25 to 35% of people that go to see a therapist never come back there the first time because they just don't have that connection with that therapist.
Right. And in every study that I've ever seen on comparing different modalities of therapy comes up with the same result, that the modality is far less important than the relationship.
Exactly.
It's all about, it doesn't matter what you use.
Yep.
It's about the relationship.
Yep.
If you don't create that connection, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, nothing will ever come from if you don't have that connection.
Yeah. And I just was thinking, imagine if when you're a kid, you're talking to your mom and she's sitting there taking notes.
Yeah, right. You're like, Mom, what are you doing?
Or now, you're talking to your wife or your friend, and they're taking notes.
Yeah. Maybe they hold on for a minute. What did you say? Taking notes. Yeah, that would be kind of bizarre, but
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And what kind of relationship would that be?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm probably going to catch a lot of flack for this.
Yeah, maybe me too. When I go back to school.
So, but you mentioned something about soap.
Yes.
Right, and I know you're not Procter & Gamble. You don't make soap.
No.
So tell us about your soap.
Okay, so when I started the doctoral program, so we have a different model at doing a PsyD, because we're more clinician based, and then if you go through a doctoral program at UH, everybody already knows you're more of an academia and research based.
Right.
So, but even though you're going through a PsyD, you kind of have an interest to do some research, and you like to kind of dabble in that a little bit. As well as it's a very smaller number at UH, so the professors usually a one-on-one relationship, maybe 1 and 2 at the most.
Wait, did you say smaller at Argosy or smaller at
Smaller
UH?
at UH. So UH probably brings in about 7 through their PhD program, where we may bring in maybe double that through a PsyD program. But we focus more on clinician and less academia and research. So I said during the first year, I didn't really have a lot of guidance when it came to, what direction I want to go, what orientation am I going to be, what's it like to do start a private business. I had all these questions I just didn't know. So this end of the second year, I said, you know what? Instead of going out looking for it, I'm just going to develop myself and put it to the streets. And that was putting a mentorship program together. And I devised this organization called Student Organization for the Advancement of Psychology. And the platform is really for what we're doing at Argosy is providing a mentorship program, mentors to the first year cohort that comes in. So that way they're married up with people of like interests, like orientation maybe if they know, and help them through the process of the first year, answer questions about diagnostic practicum, grades, research papers, tutoring, help, whatever case might be to help them through that first year, because it is difficult if you don't know what's going on.
So who do you draw the mentors from?
The mentors are usually second year on and volunteers. So we're not telling anybody that they have to do it. They volunteer for it. And we try to keep a robust pool of individuals that have different likes and interests, so that way we can marry them up with the right person when they come in. And the individuals that are in the mentorship program are individuals that have, most of them have been published in some form, presentation or APA presentation. They've done a little bit of research. They got a very good GPA.
You're talking about the mentors?
Yeah, the mentors.
Oh,
yes.
wow. People get published already while they're still in the program?
Yeah, I actually have an APA presentation in August at Denver. And then I also did the IVAT presentation, the 13th annual Hawaii IVAT convention that was this year in March, end of March.
Hang on a second, we have to go to a break.
Okay.
I want to ask you more about that when we come back. Don't go away, don't touch the mouse. We'll be right back with more Shrink Wrap.
Aloha, I'm Keli'i Akina with the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii, and one of our delights is to be partnered with Think Tech Hawaii and produce programs every week. Every Monday at 2 o'clock, we have a show called E Hana Kako, which means let's work together. So we bring people from all across the nation and the country, and certainly throughout the islands together here to talk with them about how to work together, and how to work together to do the following: to build a better economy, a better government, a better society. So if you're interested in the research of our think tank, the Grassroots Institute, or if you're interested in how that's applied at the governmental and community and business levels, you'll enjoy the fascinating conversations with our guests on E Hana Kako every week on Think Tech Hawaii at 2 o'clock on Mondays. Until our next show, I'll see you. Aloha.
Welcome back to Shrink Wrap. I'm still here with my guest, Anthony Sigmund, and we were talking about some of his presentations that he's done. What were you presenting about at the IVAC?
The IVAC, I did a poster presentation about the stigma of veterans seeking mental health in the military and how the commands look at them.
That's kind of why I'm doing this show, to try to dispel some of the stigma around mental health in general, but I know in particular it's a huge problem in the military because there have been so many soldiers exposed to traumatic events, bombs going off around them, things like that. And I know in my own practice, sometimes I see military personnel that come to me because of the stigma, rather than go to the military, because within the military they can get help, but they choose not to. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Actually, I've been on both sides of the fence. I was never diagnosed with PTSD, and I don't believe I have PTSD, but I have been in the command position where I evaluate soldiers all the time for fit for duty. But the one thing I've realized is soldiers will not go to their commands because they feel that the promotions will be held up, discharged from the service, or they're just looked upon as a very weak soldier.
Yeah, damaged.
Yeah, exactly. So they don't want that stigma, so they just rather not deal with it. A lot of them will pay private insurance, go out, or they'll wait till they get out, and then they'll start claiming that. But the problem that they have with doing that when they get out is there's no record of it in the military. So if there's any type of compensation or medical disability,
they're not entitled.
They're not entitled to it, or VA services once they get out.
Wow.
But it is very profound in the military, and what really is the way to combat that is the leadership in the military. We always preach that, seeking behavioral health is not a weakness. You have to be very strong, actually, to seek help or ask for help. It's stronger for an individual to do that than to sit back and think that they can compartmentalize it and deal with it themselves. When I was in a leadership role, I always, on Fridays, I used to sit down with my soldiers, my whole formation. I had a company of 300 soldiers. Now, not all of them would be on Friday, but I have a big majority, and I do a safety brief. And I'd always talk about behavioral health. And I always say, you're not a weak soldier. You don't have anything to lose. The command's not going to look at you in a negative way. I promote you to go see behavioral health. I want you to go see somebody and talk about your anxiety or your depression or your marital problems. Because if we handle it now, before it becomes a problem, then I won't get that phone call in the middle of the night saying, somebody's suicidal or has suicide ideations, or that they have a domestic issue, because we've gone and got help, and we have some tools to help yourself in those situations. But that's the biggest way to combat it. But there is a plethora of individual soldiers that just will not seek help in the military because of that stigma.
Yeah, it's huge, and the suicide problem is huge. Right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
But I could see their thinking. Like, especially if you're in some sort of a dangerous situation and you tell your commanding officer that you've got all this anxiety or even had suicidal thoughts, they may be reluctant to send you out on a certain assignment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's a kind of catch-22, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
but in the same token, what they don't realize is that if they seek help and they do tell the command that they are seeking some kind of professional help for anxiety or whatever, and the command knows about it, then the command can help. the
Yeah.
command can help them facilitate times to go see a counselor. Or, for instance, that mission where they're going outside to do a fob, yeah, it's one less soldier that they can send outside to do a mission, but let's send somebody that's not have anxiety,
Right.
and let's work with him on his anxiety issues and get him
Right.
past that to be a better state to maybe perform missions in
But
the
does
future.
that mean if I'm that soldier, does that mean I'm not going to get a promotion because I'm not being sent out?
Yeah, there is those individuals that in the
Yeah.
leadership and the commands that have that sense of, this is what a soldier should do, and they're
Yeah.
not supposed to have anxiety, they're not
Yeah.
supposed to have depression, stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
but everybody suffers it. I've seen myself when I was in the military. I went to see a counselor for anger management. I was very angry at one time, and it's very very difficult for me as a senior leadership to walk into a behavioral health facility and see all my soldiers or soldiers that are junior than me,
Yeah.
and I'm there for help, and
Right.
people behind the desk, you here to pick up somebody? No, I'm actually have an appointment, and they're kind of like,
Wow,
Oh,
that's
wow.
courageous.
that is,
Yeah, for you to do that.
and I'm like scared to do that, but
Yeah.
you have to do it, and you can't tell people to do it and not be able to do it yourself.
Right.
So you have to show that as a leadership in the military. And as a
Hey, I
leader.
just remembered that, I don't know if you ever read Catch-22, but there's some sort of scene where the guy who's trying to get out of the military, he goes to see the shrink or counselor, whatever they called it. This is during World War II.
Mhm.
And he says, I need to get out of here. Well, what's your problem? He says, well, they're shooting at me. And the doctor goes, they're shooting at everyone. He says, yeah, but that doesn't matter. They're shooting at me.
Other people don't matter.
And the catch-22 was, of course, if he wasn't afraid, he'd be mentally ill because they're shooting at him.
Right,
Right?
right.
And if he admits he's afraid, they say, oh, you're fine.
Right. Yeah. No.
You don't need help. You belong right here.
That's funny.
Yeah, that was Catch-22. But so you've done it again, it sounds like, with the SOAP program. You saw a need, and your resiliency allowed you, promoted you, encouraged you to create the whole thing yourself.
Correct. Yeah, so I saw that need, and I wanted to start out with the mentorship. And the other things that we're trying to do is eventually, far off goals, is to eventually have an entity that can go into maybe some of these private practices and be able to data collect information, because there's a lot of therapists around the island that are doing evidence-based treatment,
Yeah.
but they may be doing just a little twist different that's being very successful for them in a different other populations, anxiety or whatever. And I think the problem we have right now is there's a gap between the theorists, the researchers, and the clinicians. Information doesn't really kind of cross those levels.
Right.
So I think that the information from the clinicians that are doing the evidence-based treatments every day needs to get out to everybody else on the island to help treat whatever population they may be working with. And I hope that my MPO, my entity, will eventually be able to transgress into that position where they can collect that data and give it to other clinicians on the island to help
That would
benefit
be
them.
great. I mean, because as a individual practitioner myself, it's very hard to assess what I'm doing.
Right.
And no matter which modality I'm using, pick whatever one you want, EMDR, say, right, or attachment theory. I'm doing it differently than it is in the book,
Right.
right? Everybody adds their own personal spin, and I'm probably unaware of it, of what exactly it is I'm doing. If I
Right.
had a third party, observing, watching, and evaluating, and following up, maybe that's the most important thing. I don't know, what happens 5 years down the road
Right.
to the clients that saw me,
Right.
right? And when I did my internship with addiction, the same thing. Maybe they'll follow up 6 months or a year, but with addiction, it's a lifelong issue.
Right.
So nobody knows
Yeah.
which is more effective. And there's, billions of dollars being spent on treatment, and nobody knows. It's like advertising, right? You spend all this money, you don't know which one works.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So you
yeah.
spend maybe 100 times more than you have to.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the whole purpose of eventually for this MPO is to bring those resources and bring that information of what clinicians are doing, because there's a lot of clinicians on the island that's doing great work.
Right.
But they're just so busy treating
Right.
that there's no way that they can sit around and do research and collect their own data.
Right.
But it's there. So
Yeah.
hopefully. Once this
Or even to figure out
organization-
exactly what it is they're doing.
Yeah, and tell them that that's working, keep it up,
Yeah.
or this is not working, whatever. And I'm not saying I'm a military amount of expert, but I think the data proves or gives information for itself. You collect the data, you analyze it, and it'll tell you whether or not it's working, not working, and then you can formulate your own ideas of how to make it better,
Right.
And then publish that and get it out to individuals here in Hawaii to learn from that.
Right, because many times a client will come back, 5 sessions later and say to me, when you said blah, 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 that changed everything for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really? I said blah, blah, blah? Because you don't know what works. And, but again, I wonder if it would just prove the same result, like it's not the modality, it's the relationship. But even if it's that, even if you show, once again, how does one create the relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Why are some people better than other people? What are they doing differently?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think that's the $64 million question.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could solve everything from that, right?
Right. Not only with therapists, but teachers, students.
Yep.
Yep. What works? What worked? Like that's why I asked you, what's your secret? You faced all this adversity, and you turned it around like this. You saw a need,
Yeah.
and you say, "Oh, I could do that." And what gave you the, confidence?
Well, I would definitely say the military has given me the confidence. It's put me on stage in a lot of different atmospheres where I had to figure out how to do something, or I had to be very sure of myself, because a lot of times I was talking to individuals, senior ranking or large populations, and I had to know the information, and I could just shoot from the hip. But I think that the military has probably given me the best source of building my resiliency and understanding how to do. Because one thing I think the Army does do, which is probably a negative thing, is when you have a problem, sometimes you don't get to really necessarily deal with those emotions or feelings right away. You gotta kind of put it on the back shelf, carry out the mission, and then you can kind of go back and reassess it. And then the last 10 years of military, I just seen so many soldiers that are going through a lot of problems in their life, and I think to myself, I used to be right there with you, and I used to have some of those problems. So let me now show you and let you know kind of what I've done to kind of help myself through those positions and help you build your resiliency.
Yeah.
And the Army is big on that. They're doing this master resiliency training in the military that helps promote that in the Army as well as the other services. So
I could see why you were an excellent recruiter. You owe all your success to the Army.
yeah.
Before we wrap up, I just wanted to repeat this announcement that Dr. Richard Reese will be facilitating a free bereavement and caregiving support group starting on Sunday, June 5th, through to the end of the year. It's absolutely free, if I didn't say that before, and the group will be primarily oriented towards bereavement, but will also address caregiver, talking about resiliency issues and anticipatory loss. We welcome up to 12 members, Dr. Reese says, and the group will meet on Sundays from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at Temple Emmanuel, 2550 Pully Highway. Call Dr. Reese at 295-3999 or the rabbi at Temple Emmanuel, 596-7521, extension 3270, or email the rabbi at rabbi@shiloah.org. And turning back, Anthony, I just really wanted to thank you for coming on the show today, and I've learned a lot, and I wish you lots of luck, and I hope all your plans for the SOAP program come true.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you so
very
much.
Absolutely.
See you next time.